Welcome everyone. This video will be a crash course on practical vulnerability management using Qualys tool. The complete course is already updated under Ultimate SOC Analyst course bundle. I highly suggest you should check that out. Vulnerability management is an integral part of SOC and GRC. You should never miss that. If you enjoy such crash course, please subscribe this channel and like the video if you find this useful for your career. So, without taking much time, let's get started. All right, so now let's talk about different points we are going to cover in this crash course. First thing first, we are going to learn what is Qualys vulnerability management. Second, we are going to talk about the practical vulnerability management process. Next, we are going to set up a Qualys vulnerability management trial account. Then we are going to start with our first step in the preparation with Qualys VM, where we are going to set up our inventory, assets, IP address, domain, everything. Next, we are going to talk about knowledge base on Qualys, where we are going to cover different QID, vulnerabilities, and database of different vulnerabilities as well. Next, we are going to launch vulnerability scanning against all the target. And then we are going to perform risk assessment and we are going to prioritize the vulnerability as well. Next, we will talk about how to remediate those vulnerabilities. And next, we will learn about how to prepare the reports, how to customize the scan report, how to generate new executive reports as well. All right, so now let's first learn what is Qualys VM. Now, Qualys VM is very powerful tool. It's used for vulnerability management and used by almost all the multinational businesses globally. It is a very close competitor to Tenable, I would say. And Qualys vulnerability management, as I said, it's a leading, it's a powerful vulnerability management tool, and it is a cloud-based platform designed to help organizations to identify, track, and remediate the vulnerabilities across all their infrastructure. Maybe it's a network, web application, cloud, or maybe the endpoint. Okay. So some of the key features are it has the asset discovery capability, which where it can dynamically discover all the asset and manage the inventory of it. It can also help us to perform the continuous monitoring. It can keep a track of changes and new vulnerabilities in the real time and also help us to be aware about our security posture. Next, it has a different integration available, very specifically integration with the AWS, Azure, and GCP cloud. All right. Now these are different platform and apps available other than the vulnerability management. You see here, this is vulnerability management, but Qualys also has multiple other solutions as well. It has capability for asset management, CMDB synchronization for managing assets, and syncing it with the ServiceNow CMDB, which is the third party tool. It has cloud inventory tool, certificate management, threat protection, container security, indicator of compromises. Some of the tools are in beta. It might be in fully functional now. And we also have compliance monitoring tool by Qualys, which is policy compliances, PCI compliance. This is very powerful tool for the organization in the falling under PCI DSS compliance. Falling under PCI DSS compliance, they have to meet all the 12 requirements, and for them it's very important to perform the ASV scan in the network, right? So all the financial healthcare organization who fall under the PCI DSS compliance, maybe they are storing, processing, or forwarding credit card or payment card information. They have, for them it's very important. Next, file integrity monitoring to keep a track of file changes in the network. Security assessment questionnaires and web application scanning. Okay, so web application scanning is very powerful, and this help us to identify all the vulnerabilities on our web application, maybe internal or external web application. All right, so now let's talk about the architecture of Qualys vulnerability management. Okay, so in this architecture, at the center, we have our Qualys dashboard or Qualys manager, which we access, and we have multiple other components as well. Let's talk.
let's talk about them one by one. You can actually scan endpoints by installing the agent on those devices. Okay, you have to install Qualys agent on Windows laptop, Windows, maybe Linux machine, Apple devices as well. And you can also scan your on-premises infrastructure, like maybe your network devices, your routers, switches, firewalls. You can also scan your virtual machines, Docker instances, VMware, and everything. You can also scan your bare metal servers or databases or storage devices as well. For this to work, you need to install Qualys scanner appliance on one of your server on premises, right? So once that has been established, it will the scanner appliance will form a encrypted channel with our centralized dashboard. And once it is done, then we can scan all of our internal infrastructure resources remotely from the cloud dashboard. Okay, now it can also scan all the resources in the cloud. It can scan all the servers, compute, and everything in the cloud. Maybe it's there in the AWS cloud, maybe in Azure, maybe in GCP. This requires a virtual scanner, cloud connector, that once it's been integrated, we can scan all of our cloud resources as well, right? Next, let's talk about different connectors or different agents or sensors. Okay, it can be physical. As I said, it's a scanner appliances. So for on-premises infrastructure, as we learned earlier, for router switches, firewalls, for scanning servers, databases on premises or within the data center, we can install our Qualys scanner appliance on physical servers. So that's good for data center, corporate infrastructure, LAN WAN infrastructure. We can also use the virtual scanner appliances. That's good for the cloud infrastructure, virtualized infrastructure as well. We also have cloud connector. That's good for PaaS, platform as a service cloud, or infrastructure as a service infrastructure as well. This comes in pre-built as in the marketplace, so you can download these connectors from the Azure marketplace or AWS marketplace directly. Next, we have Cloud Agent. This is a lightweight agent. This can be installed on our Windows machines or maybe our Apple devices, Linux endpoints. This majorly for the endpoints. Okay. Next, we also have Passive, which can be done with the tab devices as well, right? We of course have API integration for third-party integration. You can integrate with the ServiceNow tool. You can integrate with Infoblocks. These for further integration. Okay, or maybe to retrieve detailed information or perform certain automation. All right, so now let's talk about practical vulnerability management process. In this, the very first step is preparation. Okay, in this step, we perform couple of activities. The first activity is the asset management or asset inventory management. Okay, in here we actually identify and classify all of our asset within the organization. This could include our hardware, like such as our servers, our endpoint like computers and all the devices. It could also be our routers, switches, firewall, load balancer, everything. Then it could be our software like operating system of Windows, Linux, Mac OS, everything. And can be a web application database as well. So you basically keep a track of all the relevant information. This information can be IP address of those devices, and then actual name of those devices, the domain name, and the most important priority of those assets. Okay, so if this is a very very critical asset, maybe a web application or a database hosting the customer information, that's a high priority asset for me. Okay, next we also perform few more activities such as managing the vulnerability databases. Usually we keep a track of it online through website called cvedetails.com, details.com, exploitdb.com. There are many other websites or NVD database as well, but commercial tool provides their own knowledge base that you can use it, that consists a list of vulnerabilities. Okay, and then you also have to finalize a specific tool. Okay, this is all up to you, and this all goes based on the budget and your proof of concept. You can go for, of course, Qualys. This is widely used, very popular. You can go for Tenable. Nessus is also part of Tenable. And you can also try OpenVAS. This has two options: community edition and commercial options as well. Okay. Next is the vulnerability identification, and or we call it as vulnerability discovery. And this, we basically launch our scan. Okay, we launch our scan. We conduct our regular scan against all of our asset, our hardware, software, web application, databases as well, to identify any potential vulnerability. Okay, usually this should be done. This is all automated for sure, and but this has to be scheduled in advance. Okay, this has to be scheduled as a best practice. That's a very very important thing. You can do it on bi-monthly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis, so it depends on your organization posture assessment, but it has to be scheduled. You can also perform some manual assessment as well whenever needed. And what's really important is, in here you can also decide, once you run the vulnerability scanning, once you get the result, you can also involve penetration testing team as well to exploit certain vulnerability, if that's a really really concern for you. Okay, so you can either outsource that penetration testing to the external vendor, or maybe if you have in-house team, you can tell them to get involved and perform those pen testing as well. Okay, next is the risk assessment. This is very important step, because this is where you actually classify the vulnerability based on different factors. Okay, you categorize the vulnerability based on its severity, exploitability, potential impact, using its CVSS scores. Okay, CVSS score is basically a calculation based on different parameters. You don't have to manually do it, but you can also try doing it. There are different calculator available as well online. You can search CVSS scores calculator online, and based on different parameters like confidentiality, integrity, availability, and other factor as well, you can calculate your own CVSS scores. But this can also be different score value can also be given by the commercial tools as well, so you can also refer them here. Okay, next is the asset criticality. You have to identify the asset that which are high priority, which has, if you lose something out of it, that would be a huge business loss. So if you remember, in the first step I also talked about the asset priority. So you can classify different vulnerability based on their asset criticality as well. Okay, next is the threat analysis. Now threat analysis is basically an activity where you actually evaluate the likelihood of the exploitation by considering the current threat intelligence and attack vector. What does it mean is, you actually look at, let's say you have a specific CVE recently identified on certain databases. So you identify if this CVE, or if this specific vulnerability has been exploited within the same industry that I am in currently, in the past maybe 1 year or so. So that is most likely very very serious for me, right? Let's say I'm into the financial services industry, and from last 1 year there is a threat actor who is exploiting this specific vulnerability in all of the financial organization within my country itself. So that's very very important for me. Now I should really evaluate, I have to really work on it. What's the CVE, what are the different asset has been impacted as well, right? Next is the prioritization. This is the most important part of it, because in any organization you might be, if you even run a scanning, you might come across 100 to 500 vulnerabilities every day. You have limited money, you have limited resources, and you have limited time. So you can't keep working on all the vulnerabilities, you can't keep fixing, patching all the vulnerabilities, right? You have to prioritize them. So the first factor that you have to work on, risk ranking. Okay, this is where you will rank risk based on different factors, based on the factors that we talked earlier as well. So the very common formula, or the way we actually calculate the risk is, the risk is calculated by likelihood of the attack into the business impact. Okay, impact on the business. Okay, so let's talk about how do we calculate this. So basically likelihood can be calculated like this. Let's say there's a specific vulnerability and this has been exploited by multiple times in the past in the financial institutions, and my business is also in the financial services. So this is high for me because the chances of getting this vulnerability exploited is higher, right? And impact can be calculated by the overall business loss. Let's say if this vulnerability get exploited, how much business loss I might have. So probably, let's say, with a number maybe 90k dollars, right? 90k dollars per hour. So that's probably high for me, right? So overall formula will be higher then, right? So that's how I come across the risk value. I perform the risk assessment, or I would say a risk calculation, and then I get to know that the overall risk is high. This also include the asset priority as well. So if the asset is high priority for me, so I should also calculate that, right? And this is of course calculated by the impact on the business, right? Next, we also talk about the, as I said, business impact, because that's very, very important. You understand what is the overall business impact on the asset. Of course, if it is a low priority asset, even if there is an impact on that, I might not be having that much of a loss, right? Then you work on the resource allocation, that what all resources do you need. You need one person to work on that activity. You need to involve a couple of other teams or maybe third party, time, budget, everything, right? Next, remediation is very straightforward. It's the basically activity where you perform the patch. You install the patch on all of your system, endpoint, web server, anything, right? So this is where you apply patch or update the fixed where you have identified the vulnerabilities, right? So usually that this cannot be done in one shot. You do it in the batch or multiple phases. Let's say you have 3000 devices in the network which has the same vulnerability. You will do it in phases. First you might do it in the 30 devices and you monitor it for maybe one day or maybe a week, and you identify if it is stable, then you can roll out for all the 3000 sites. You can do some configuration changes if required, on the firewall or any other devices as well, right? So this is a remediation phase. Next is the verification. Once the patch has been completed, you also then rescan for those vulnerability. You conduct the follow-up scan to verify the vulnerability has been successfully remediated. Then you can also go on a couple of other activity as well. You ensure there's no other thing left, right? Then you document it. You make sure the documentation is done. You document it very well. So you maintain the detailed records of remediation activity, including the changes has been made, test conducted, result obtained, and everything. All right. Next, we have the reporting. This includes multiple reporting, multiple level of reporting. First is the executive reporting. This consists of high level reports to management, giving the summary of vulnerability status, remediation process, risk reduction, everything, right? Then you can also have a detailed report that consists of technical reports for IT or security team, that includes the vulnerability details, remediation action, verification results. You don't have to worry. This is usually given by the our commercial tools like Qualys, Enable, OpenVAS. Okay. Next, you also can generate the reports based on compliance. Okay. So if you are, let's say, you are falling under PCI DSS compliance, let's say you are storing, forwarding, or processing any kind of payment card, you have to follow PCI DSS compliance. So you can run the vulnerability scan, ASV scan, for example, and then you get the report and compliance reports as well that you have to submit to the other party. Okay. Finally, the continuous improvement. You have to keep a track of all the KPI values, and you also keep a track of different lessons that you have learned across the vulnerability management. There are organizations who also follow a continuous vulnerability management program, okay, where they continuously discover the vulnerability into the network. That's also a very important steps. All right, so now let's talk about setting up Qualys. Okay, Qualys vulnerability management tool. Qualys is a cloud-based platform, so you don't have to install any software for managing the centralized dashboard. You simply visit qualys.com. Once you visit there, on the right you see try now option. Once you click on it, you have two options, either to go for enterprise true risk platform or free services. Go for a free trial, cloud platform free trial. This is where you can enter your work email, first name, last name, company name, and once you click enter, this will generate a username and password and you will get it on your mailbox. It's that easy. All right, and once you have set them up, you can finally land to a platform like this where you can find all the tools. You can find VMDR here, and you just have to click on VMDR platform, which is vulnerability detection response. And this is what you see once you set up your account. This is still in the trial account because this is valid for 30 days. You see this, and all the other tools are also listed here. This comes with the specific period of trial as well, right?
All right, so now let's begin with the preparation step. Within the preparation step, we have the most important activity, which is asset management. The asset could be IP address of the servers, or it could be the domain name as well, right? To do that, to add new asset into your Qualys vulnerability management tool, you can click on Asset tab here, and then you will see all the other options. You have address management, domains, virtual host, asset group, and many more. Okay, so let's add a new IP address or range of IP address. Okay, so you have an option. I can enable or disable this display comment option, and I can click on add IP address. So I can add an IP tracked address, DNS as well. So just to keep it simple, let's add new IP address range. You click on it, you see the general information, and then you have subscription IP address, right? So this is where you can add single IP address or maybe a range of IP address. Let me add a simple range of IP address, maybe 10.2 dot sorry 2.1 to 10.2.2 dot maybe let's say 10. Okay, we'll select the vulnerability management. That's our subscription plan. Click on add. Perfect, this has been added. You see this? If you want to modify, you can click on edit here. You can also add some attributes. Okay, tracking methods, IP address, location, or you can also add some tags. Let's say you want to say this is for NYC servers. Okay, or you can also mention some tags and save here. Okay, once it is done, you can create asset group. Okay, asset group can be combination of IP address and domain, or it can be simply as simply an IP address or maybe a domain as well. So it can be any range. Okay, can be any combination. From here you can add domains. So I can click on domains and add a new domain here. So I can enter the domain name here, and then I can click on add. Okay, I have added a few here. You can see the list of domains here. In order to create a new asset group, what you can do is you can click on new and then go to asset groups. Okay, under this you can say NYC resources, maybe for example, and then under the IP address you can select the IP address or range. Let's say I go with this range. So once the IP addresses are added, you can go to domains, and under the domains, then you can select the domain name. So let's say I select REST and this domain as well, or maybe one more. Okay, so I've added them. Then I have an option of business info. If you remember, I told you this, the business impact is very important for every asset. So you can specify different asset value in it. Every groups or every priority indicates some criticality or business impact. So currently we kept it at high level. Okay, you can also specify function, division, and location as well, and also comment if required. Okay, let's click on create. Perfect, can you see this?
this has been added, or you can also click on edit and modify this. Next, you also have an asset search option. You can search any asset, because imagine a multinational businesses organization having thousands of, maybe 20, 30, 40 thousands of asset, IP address, domain name. So it is can be very difficult to search them. So to do that, you can go to the asset search. From here you can search the assets. You can also use tags as well to search any specific assets. Okay, there are options to search based on the IP address, DNS host name, EC2 instances in case you have AWS infrastructure. You then have OS, where you have operating system information and their IP addresses as well. Applications that has been discovered, you can download the CSV file to keep a track of it, to know how to keep a track of all the asset based on the operating system, sorry, the applications. Then you have ports and service option. Then finally you have certificate options. Okay, and then at the end you have setup option, where you can manage different attributes or metadata of assets and modify some changes and merge the data as well. Let's say if you have certain agents in certain Qualys agent deployed on certain machine, and you also want to scan those assets, so you can merge the IP address with the asset agent information, right? So this all can be done from here. All right, so this is all about asset management. All right, so the second activity within the preparation step is to maintain or make sure you have knowledge base. For this, you can go to the knowledge base tab under the Qualys platform. And once you go there, yeah, once you go there, you will find option of knowledge base. Now, this gives you the list of all the vulnerabilities and the CVE details. This is the unique ID for every CVE vulnerability information from different vendors and platforms as well. And there are few more information. Every vulnerability is denoted by QID, Qualys ID. Okay, and it can have multiple vulnerabilities in it, and there is a title for it. Now you have few options available as well, like what you see in the red. This shows that the patch is available for this vulnerability. You can also see the black hat. This indicates that this exploit is available. This green signal indicates that the remote discovery is possible. Okay, so the remote discovery is possible in this case. Okay, now in order to get more detail about each of this vulnerability, you can click here and click on info under the quick actions. Once you click on info, perfect, you can see general information about this QID, what all vulnerabilities you have. Under the detail tab, you can see this is the Office application, because this is related to Microsoft Office security updates. What are the softwares that are impacted? Threat, what are the possible threat to that might exploit this vulnerability? What is the impact? It says that the vulnerability product may be prone to remote code execution, which is high priority, right? Attack. Now solution is, you customer are advised to follow this article. Once you click on it, there would be some patch available. You, whether you have to update the software or any other mechanism will be provided. Exploitability, there is no exploit available for this vulnerability. So this cannot be treated as a very very high or urgency vulnerability, but we can consider it, because again it has a remote code execution as the discovery option available, right? So then their associated malware, there's no malware mentioned. Compliance, nothing is mentioned there. So this is the all change log, right? So that's all about the information. If let's say you want to search for a specific application and want to filter out different vulnerabilities based on the platform you use and based on the priorities you have, you can click on search tab, and in here you can then maybe select CVID based on your requirement, or you can go on the bottom and uh, maybe you can select the base score, maybe 8, greater than or equal to 8, anything in between. And then there are few more options based on CVSS scores. There is the category option, authentication type, discovery method. You can select remote only, which can be discovered. The device can be discovered or the vulnerability can be discovered. You can also show the confirmed severity, potential severity. You can specify those vulnerability. I'm more interested in a specific vendor, so I can select the vendor or maybe the product of the vendor. Okay, so let's say I would like to look for all the devices, all the vulnerabilities of devices from Cisco and Microsoft for now. Okay, so Microsoft, perfect. Next, I can also select the product. Next, we also have supported modules. So we can select which modules I want to select from the Qualys point of view. Okay. So you can select those platform here. And then you can also specify Qualys top 10 vulnerability information or maybe the compliance information, maybe from COBIT, HIPAA, GLBA, SOX. Okay. Once you click on search, now this gives you around 98 vulnerabilities, right? So now you can drill down and focus more into it. Again, the green one indicates it's a remote discovery is possible. Red indicates a patch is available. It's good for us. And black indicates exploit is available. So this is how we can use the knowledge base, and it's very, very important as a part of our preparation step. All right, so this step is about vulnerability scanning. So let's launch our scan. But before we do that, we have to learn about two important concepts here. Okay, what are those? Basically, you need to know about setting up the authentication. You see here, you need to set up the authentication of your target machine. It's basically the credential. But why do we need that? Basically, this help you to get in depth information about the machine. Okay, and better security analysis as well. Next, you have to know about options profile. Okay, option profile is like scan setting. So you can customize the scan setting for different TCP or UDP port. So this is all possible with option profiles. Okay, now let's get started with it. You can see the authentication tab. Click on it, and you can see we have already added few authentication for Cisco routers and switches, Palo Alto firewall, Windows machine. If you want to create a new authentication, you can click on new, and then you can select operating system, firewalls in the network and security tab, like checkpoint firewall, Cisco Infoblocks, which is for DNS management, or maybe authentication for different web servers. And let's add a simple authentication for Unix machine. So I'll say Unix machine. Let's set the credentials. I'll set the simple credentials here. You also have an option to set them up with the Kerberos certificate SSH key as well. Then you have to specify the range of IP addresses where your target machine will fall under. So let's select the range of IP address. Let's say this one. Go to comment section, Unix machines. Let's click on create. Awesome. Can you see? This has been added now. For other kind of devices like Windows, Cisco, router switches, or Palo Alto firewall, you have few more options. If you click on edit here, you can see under the login credentials, you have basic authentication and authentication vault. With basic authentication, you have to enter the local username and password configured on the device. In the authentication vault, you can take a help from the PAM devices like Privilege Access Management Suite, like CyberArk, Azure Key, Archon, HashiCorp. These are okay. These are the one which you can leverage. This is all about authentication. So what's going to happen is once you start scanning a range of IP address, if in under that range you have the system also, then it will log into on those devices and then it will perform the vulnerability scanning. Then let's look at the option profiles. Options profiles give you these scanning or TCP port related information. For example, this is the standard profile for SANS 20 options. This is the default option profile. Let's look at this. You can click on edit or info. You can see the standard scan. This includes the 1900 ports. You can also see the list of ports here. Okay. And if you perform the light scan, this will cover somewhere around 160 ports, and these are the one. Okay. You can also add an additional ports as well. This is the map. Okay, this will perform. This will give you the additional information about TCP port, standard scan, UDP port options. You can increase the performance and add different other settings related to ESXi host discovery information as well. Once this is done, then you can come to scan option. And remember, you also have an appliance options as well. Appliance could be a physical appliance or can be a virtual appliance. Okay, a physical appliance will be installed physically in your premises, in your network infrastructure, and it will scan all the network devices within that network, with all the network devices, host machines, servers, everything through that physical appliances. Virtual appliances can be used in the cloud environment or in the virtual environment. You can see here scanner appliance. So if you have that hardware, you will see an activation code. You can enter here, and that will be authenticated. For virtual appliances, you have to download the image and you have to install on any of the servers or virtual machines. Okay. Now let's come to the scan option. And the scan option, let's launch a scan. Okay. Let's say we say web app, maybe web app 2. And then you have an option for selecting the option profile. You remember the default is initial options. Let's keep it as it is. Okay. And then because we don't have any scanner appliance, neither virtual or physical appliances, so we don't have any option here. Then we can select the targets host based on either assets or tag. So assets could be our asset group or range of IP address. So just to make our life easier, we can select the asset group. So let's say we go for NYC resources and also SAP AWS. Okay. And we can also enter the IP address, or we can exclude certain IP address as well. Okay. Once this is done, then you can notify yourself or a group of members by entering the subject line and custom message here. Okay. Then let's launch the scan. Okay, so we have an error saying that this range of IP address is needed to scan within the internal network. Please enter non-internal IP address used. So basically, this is the internal IP address. Uh, Basically a private IP address range. So we cannot really use it. So let's remove the NYC for now, because that's private IP address can only be scanned through the virtual or physical scanner. Okay, so let's only scan SAP AWS for now, which consists of public IP address, and let's launch it. Awesome. Can you see the scan status is currently queued? It might take a few minutes to complete the scan. All right, so the scan is complete, and this is the scan result. You can see there are total 17 vulnerabilities in the target server, and you can see the report based on the severity, operating system detected, and this is the detailed result. And sorry, this is the detailed results based on the vulnerabilities. Then you can see there is SHA-1 depreciated setting for SSH and ICMP timestamp request. So these are very low level vulnerability, and there are 15 informational vulnerabilities. These are information gathered from the machine, not specifically a vulnerability. Okay. Now next you can see the initial scan option and further details as well. So this is the report generated after the vulnerability scan is over. Okay, one of the most important part of any effective vulnerability management process is scheduling your vulnerability scanning. Okay, this it can be a weekly scan, or you want to schedule a monthly scan, quarterly scan based on your compliance or internal security practices. Scheduling is very important. Okay, so to schedule a new scan on your Qualys system, you can click on new, click on schedule scan. Then you can similar, it's very similar to what we have done earlier. Just mention the scan, maybe let's say web app to scan, maybe weekly scan, for example. You can again select the options profile just the way we have done earlier. then you specify the target host. You can select the systems, SAP, AWS, and then again you can specify the IP addresses or range, or you can also select them based on the tags. You can schedule the scan. Let's say we want to go for any, maybe 70 17, let's say we do it 7. Okay, scan will start on 27th. So duration, you can specify to duration, and you can also specify the occurrence as well. Let's say we want to do it weekly basis. So I want to do it 27th is first scan, and 27th is Tuesday. So Tuesday. So I want to do it on every Tuesday. Okay. It's done, then I can go to notification. That's where I can create a notification. It should notify me when the scan is going to start. So it's a pre-scan notification. So I can do it maybe let's say 1 hour. Maybe let's say I have to get notified probably 4 hours before. So four before. Okay. So I should get this notification, or I can possibly customize it as well. And I can also have a notification after the scan is complete. Okay. And then finally we have an option to for schedule status. So let's say you create the scan, and maybe in future you want to modify it. Okay. Maybe you want to cancel it. So you can come here again, and under schedule status, then you can deactivate this task. Okay, so it will be deactivated. All right, so this step is about risk assessment and prioritization. Okay, so we are going to perform the initial risk assessment. Most of the stuff will be done by the Qualys system itself. We need to work on analyzing it, and we then prioritize the vulnerability. Okay, so now let's understand this. Vulnerability can be prioritized based on multiple ways. It has to be combined by prioritizing based on asset criticality and vulnerability classification. We can classify it based on different CVSS scores. What is CVSS? This is basically a common vulnerability scoring system. So if you look at the NVD and I'm sorry, the NIST official database, so there are multiple ways to calculate the vulnerability. There are different calculators available given by the NIST itself. So there is a version 2, version 3, and version 4 as well. Version 2 calculator is over here, which has multiple factors based on your organization and their best what works for them. You can choose multiple parameters and confidentiality, integrity, and availability level, and then you will get a score as well. Again, you have version 3 calculator, version 4 as well. This is the way you manually calculate the CVSs, right? But Qualys do that job for you as well. So over here, if you, let's say you want to perform the risk assessment and prioritize the vulnerability, we are going to use two tabs: vulnerability and prioritization. Let me first show you with vulnerability. What you can do is, you can, under the vulnerability, you can set the severity score of a vulnerability. For example, I can say severity. Okay, so under the severity, I can say what's the severity I'm looking for. Maybe let's say I want to see all the severity from, let's say, 4. Okay, so on this will show me all the vulnerability of severity score 4. And this is what you can see here, right? This is 74, 74, 74. Yeah. So now I can also add an asset factor here as well. You can see this, and this is very important. If you add criticality score of for against every asset, this makes your job even more perfect, I would say, because it doesn't make sense if you get a high vulnerability or medium level vulnerability on a low level asset, right? I mean, I'm not saying we don't really patch them, but it doesn't make sense to prioritize it. We are all talking about prioritizing the vulnerability, because at the end, there can be hundreds of vulnerability in the organization every day, but we have limited resources, so we have to think about prioritizing it, right? So in the asset, then we can say, okay, the criticality score can be maybe let's say 4. So I can then apply the filter, and I should see these many vulnerabilities. So I can be very much focused now. I can focus on only this vulnerability, right? I can also work on prioritization. So under the prioritization, they have a separate, different tool set altogether. So I can click on plus sign, and over here I can select my asset as well. So in my case, all the asset tags that I've created for for web servers and on-premise network are part of asset groups, different asset groups. Okay, so I'll select the asset group, and then I go further, and then under this I have vulnerability age as well. Remember, vulnerability age is also very important factor. What's the age of vulnerability which was discovered earlier? And then you can select multiple indicators, threat indicators. Let's say I currently exploit kit is 0. Let's say I want to also check easy exploit as well, so it can be customized. I can also select public exploit as well. And let's keep everything as it is. On your right, you have kernel option, running services, and other options too. Currently we only have 3 asset into the network, and there are total 8 vulnerabilities at this moment. Let's prioritize it. Perfect. Now you see one, two, three, four, five vulnerabilities, okay, that we need to work on. Now what you have done earlier, you can again do it here as well. You can also, currently it's all from all 3 assets, so you can also add a filter on a specific criticality score as well. So you can say I want to have criticality score of 4 or maybe 5. So all the asset with criticality score of 5 should be filtered out. Okay, should be shown here. I don't have any, so it's all good. Let's check for 4. Perfect. So these are all critical asset, and these are the vulnerabilities on it, with which are high priority. But I can even be more granular. If you want, I can apply a few more filter based on the severity score as well, maybe based on 4 or 5, and then let's filter it out. And yeah, I don't see any. But if you apply even more, maybe 3, you can see some. Yeah, so I have this vulnerability, right? So this is the way we can actually apply the filters and prioritize, perform the risk assessment and prioritize a vulnerability. Now my job is easier. I can focus on this specific vulnerability at any given moment of time. All right, so now that you have prioritized the vulnerability, you have to keep a track of it, right? Because next you have to remediate the risk. You have to remediate the risk associated with that vulnerability, right? So you might apply some controls, you might perform a patch management. So you have to assign this vulnerability and maybe a rest of the vulnerability as well to a specific team who is going to perform the patch management. With Qualys, you can create a rule. So any vulnerability that matches that rule, it will automatically create a ticket and will assign to the appropriate team. Okay, so you can create a rule here and specify, let's say, SAP related, for example, incident. Okay, not an incident, but SAP related patch. Okay, and then you specify the asset group. Let's say in our case it's going to be SAP AWS. We can select the list of vulnerability which fall under this, basically scan option. So I'll select this one. I can select one more, and that's it. Click OK. Then you can set the action. Now the action would be to create a ticket set to open, and then we can, ticket will be created and assigned to a user with a deadline for resolution, right? And you can add a comment, investigate it further. Okay, and you can create the incident and then save, right? So it's been created. The new remediation policy has been applied. So if anything matches this condition, a ticket should be automatically created. You can see it's loading. All right, so you don't see anything here yet, but if anything matches, you should see the ticket, or it will assign to the appropriate person or team member. All right, so now let's quickly understand how do we generate reports. Okay, so for this, you can come to report section and you can click on new. You can go to scan reports, template based report. If you are performing PCI DSS scan, if you're falling under financial organization, you
you, if in case you are storing, processing, or forwarding any kind of payment card information, you have to run ASV scan or PCI DSS based scan. For them, it is useful. For us, for normal generic vulnerability scan, we can go for template based scan. You can give a name. Let's say you want to generate the report based on SAP application, SAP report, maybe last week, weekly, and then you can mention the report. Do you want the executive report to share with the CISO, management, or high severity report, technical report? So let's go for technical report for now. But you also have different templates. You see, you can also go for different other templates as well, right? Uh, Over here, okay. In template library, you can also select few more templates. Then you have different formats, whether you want the data in the CSV, doc format, or PDF format. Let's go for CSV for now. Let's select the assets. So let's go for SAP AWS, and then you can run the report. This will take few seconds or maybe minute. All right, so you can see the report has been generated, and this is how the report really looks like. You get all the details with the IP address, DNS, QID, title, and everything in detail.